Hi, morning. Welcome everybody. This morning we are talking MVP, minimum viable product. What is your minimum viable product? Do you have one? Do you know how to make one? And then what do you do with it once you've got one? So Ed, I think this was your topic. So I'm going to kick the ball straight across to you, seeing we were talking about sports before we started, and see what you can do with it.
Yeah, this was inspired by Tabiso not being put off by, not having a recording studio, not having all the equipment and stuff, and just getting on with it. And my minimal viable product was when I decided to sort of leave the world of sort of finance and accountancy, and I met up with another guy and we decided to go in business. One of the products we wanted to produce was a training logbook. And there was only one available at the time. Well, actually, no, there were two. There was a New Zealand one by a firm called Kennelly and an American one by a firm called Nathan. And we felt that the content wasn't very good. So we designed a new logbook with better content, but we needed it to look as good as the other ones on the outside. And we couldn't afford to do a huge, great print run because we didn't know whether it would be any good or not. And we also wanted to customize the front covers for the shop, so it looked like the shop's own. So, and actually this is, you can't see it very well because of the sunshine, but this is the book. And it also needed the spiral bound, so it opened out flat. So, we came up with a solution. We had, I printed them all on a little HP inkjet printer. Well, I had a couple of printers in my room. I designed all the pages inside on Word. And then we laminated the covers. We got some A5 pieces of card. I did the artwork and we printed them on those printers. And it was a pain in the ass. But at least outside, they looked as good as the Kennelly one. And inside, they were a lot better. And then we sold them into several shops and we realized, yes, this was going to be a goer. So then we could invest, and we went to a printer and said, look, can you print these things? And he said, well, it's a bit difficult printing a short run. So we came to an agreement where he would do a long run of the insides. So we had a huge stock of the insides of the book, the thick sort of pagey bits. And then as we got an order, he would print the covers. And that worked. And then we had a professional designer to design the covers. And it went from being a fairly basic thing, which I printed on my little HP printer at home, which actually printed out probably 20 times more than it said it should do. And it cost virtually nothing, to having a professional printer, a professional designer. But just getting it out there in the first place, it was that thing of actually making sure externally it looked at least as good as the Kennelly one, which was the market leader at the time. And it just about did. So it just did the job. And then we could build and build and build and build and build. And I did the same thing a little while back. I launched an online running magazine. It didn't succeed because it was a subscription model, because I wanted to keep it free of advertising, because if you read Runner's World, it's driven by the advertisers. And I wanted to be honest. And there, I very quickly managed to get something together online that did the job just enough to get out there. And I got some subscribers, and then I started improving the quality, improving the quality of the video, the quality of the writing, the quality of the pictures, the quality of the interviews. But actually the subscription model didn't work because there was so much free stuff out there. It couldn't compete. But at least it gave me a chance to actually get in, experiment, try it quite cheaply. And I found a software package I could rent by the month rather than having to buy the whole thing up front. So a bit like, I don't know, Office 365 compared to buying it, just So yeah, that's my experience of minimal viable products. And it also means, you know, if you do have to fail, and sometimes you do fail, like with the magazine, you haven't invested too much money up front. But I do find it difficult sometimes not to want perfection and to accept that actually the first thing doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be good enough, just good enough. So that's my thoughts.
Great, thanks, Ed. Yeah, some nice examples there. So, Thabiso, I saw you nodding vigorously, and obviously some of those thoughts resonated with you. So, yeah, let's chat about your thoughts around MVP.
Okay, I think that you have to get out a minimum viable product for as quickly as you can, you know, because reality is a very subjective concept. And by getting out the minimum viable product out, you're making your idea tangible, you know, you're making it objective, you know. When you have that, you have a chance to change the world, you know, because it now exists within the realms of the mind. You know, you actually created it from your mind and it exists. So it is very important to get from the idea phase and to the product, you know, as quickly as you can, because it actually gives you the confidence to actually go through with your plans and to see where you can actually improve, right? I will talk about Today, I'll talk about Steve Jobs, of course, and I'll talk about his companies Next and Pixar, because they involved, you know, minimum viable products, you know. When Steve Jobs got kicked out of his company, I think in the 80s, he cashed out in terms of his stocks options into Apple. So he had a lot of money. So what he did is that he actually started companies. He actually started one called Next, and Next was in the education market, right? And he bought a company from George Lucas, the Star Wars guy. And George Lucas was selling a section in his company where they dealt with a lot of animation, you know? So Steve Jobs actually bought that. And he bought that company, the George Lucas company, mainly for the hardware and of course the software. You know, he was just kicked out from Apple, so I think maybe he wanted, you know, something. He wanted to get back into the computer space again, but uh, it wasn't a success. You know, the whole company, it wasn't what consumers needed at the time, you know, and it didn't sell well, and you just couldn't get anything through that medium, you know. I'm talking about the George Lucas company now, you know, now called Pixar, of course. It's because, okay, it didn't sell well, right? He, because the software, rather, because the software was good enough, there was a chance, you know. One of his employees, you know, was like a creative, was a guy named John Lasseter, you know, and he was a guy who liked animation, and you know, he started asking Jobs for like money to actually build stuff with the software, you know, and it wasn't Job didn't expect much from that, you know, because he saw the company as a failing ship and the hardware wasn't doing well. At least the software did something, but it wasn't something that he could sell, you know. It wasn't what the consumer needed. So when he gave John Lasseter the money, it was just like, ah, man, you know, let's see what their software can do. There wasn't any expectations, you know. And of course, when it came to Next, the company that he actually founded, it too wasn't generating a lot of money. It was, you know, it was also because it was, I don't think it was, the company didn't account for, it didn't know what the consumers needed, rather, you know, because that whole educational field section of the market wasn't, you know, it wasn't big yet, because the personal computers era wasn't big yet, you know, so computers weren't a thing, and consumers weren't looking to buy a computer that's worth like, you know, $2,000, for example. It was too expensive and they didn't understand it. So now both his company, Steve Jobs, they were failing. They were like failures, you know, and Steve Jobs was losing a lot of money. Um, he was, you know, he was losing a lot of money. But you know, something came out when it comes to one of his companies. Now I'm talking about the Pixar. Through, you know, just pumping money to the guys, you know, John Lasseter and the guys, and then actually playing around with the software, they actually managed to create an animation, short animation film, you know, and it was called Luxo Junior. And it was innovative, you know, it was revolutionary. It was something that the world hadn't seen before, because animation used to be like 2D and it was very boring and bland, you know. But what Luxo Junior had is that the animation was ahead of its time. It had depth, it had textures, it was just 3D, it was just out of this world. And by chance, you know, it got nominated for an Oscar, you know, and it was a great thing because that wasn't the plan. That wasn't the plan. Yes, Luxor Jr. Yes, that wasn't the plan when Steve Jobs actually got yes. That's the one. That's the one. It got nominated for an Oscar, and it actually won. So when it actually won the Oscar, the guys, the business model of Pixar actually had to change, because now they stopped, you know, investing into hardware and software, because they realized that there was actually an opportunity, you know, to be made out of this animation thing, you know. So they changed their business model, and luckily the guys at Disney came through and were like, yo, man, we saw the whole Luxor Junior thing and it's dope. We like it. We'll give you money so you can start maybe an animation movie and we'll split the profits. You know, it was because of this minimum product, you know, that Pixar is what it is today. It was because of this thing that Pixar actually created movies like Toy Story and went on to become the biggest animation studio in the world. It was because of this plaything in software, you know. And now I'm going to his other company, which was Next. He also bought it, but it wasn't also doing well, you know. But what happened was that Apple actually saw the whole product that Steve Jobs had, and Apple bought the company for 500 million, you know, because they actually loved the software. And the software was actually integrated into Apple's operating system. And the Apple guys actually called Steve Jobs again to actually be the CEO of the company. So it was a success because of these two minimum viable products. You know, you have to have something to show to the world, and something will build on, something will grow on from there. Um, I think that's just my contribution on the whole minimum viable product thing. Thank you, Ivan.
Thanks, Thabiso. Yeah, well, you clearly know your stuff around Jobs and his track record. It is interesting how these things have developed over a relatively short space of time. So, Jasper, MVP, where are you?
Yeah, and morning. Here we are as a result of Thabiso's minimum viable product. We were also impressed with his Loo project, and I liked the second title of your song had something like Instinct, and I thought it was a nice pun there for doing it in a loo. Right. Yeah, and I think, you know, you're in the Biso in the right crowd here. I know almost the very first thing that I've heard coming out of the mouth of Trevor and Ivan was MVP, minimum viable product. And for the last 3-4 years in the chamber, that's what we've been hammering people on to say, just go out and you know, fix it later, but just get it out there that people can see. So I was just thinking in terms of my own life, the applications. In hindsight, I can say that starting the company, New Life, and take it out to Africa, I was almost forced in a situation because I didn't plan at that stage to go and actively start to expand into Africa. But once I realized that, hey, I need to do something, within a week, we set up an import-export company. And, you know, I think it's that you do what you can with what you have. And the good news is you don't need to be a specialist on anything. There are specialists out there. They just wait for the likes of you to say, we need this. Who can help me? And then people will step forward and they'll do it. So within a week, I had a guy who knew the export-importing market, took me to all the right people. We set up a company. I came back to South Africa, registered as an exporter. And there I was, exporting to Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania. And as a result of that, our family breakthrough came. And today we have the Eagle's Nest Lodge and Convention Center. So that was the Eagle's Nest was the next minimum viable product. We started with just our own front. And then as a result of that, we moved, the opportunity arose to buy the plot next door, or the house next door, which was a bank repossessed house. And we started with literally just renting out renting out the house to a tenant and using the garage as packing space for my export things. And after 6 months, I didn't have to export anymore, and I didn't want to have a tenant on my doorstep. So we didn't know what to do with the space. So someone said, well, make it a guest house. You often get people coming over for visit. And we started with just 3 rooms. And my wife, Helen, was the chief cook and bottle washer. And that's how it started. And then my son moved into what was then the garage space. And when he left, we said, all right, it looks like this guest house thing can work. And we started to spend some money to upgrade it to a self-catering unit. And then it was becoming just too big for Helen to handle all by herself. And for the first time, we had to employ a servant to help with making the beds and stuff like that. And I was scared that will this business pay for it? Because I didn't have money in my own cash flow to do it. But, you know, everything we've done in the Eagle's Nest was from that point of being scared. Will it work? And then came the opportunity to buy the 3rd property. And so it was literally a 35-year project of putting together something that today is a guest house and a conference center with can have 60 parking and 100 people in the conference, and 18 people, 18 rooms, of which 3 are self-catering. And also at the time of starting it, nobody could foresee it would become almost the hub of business here in South Africa. So like you say, you just start moving, and then things open up for you. And then what I'm busy with right now, GEC. GEC is again that minimum viable product. I literally started with an idea in 2008 and had no product, nothing to show for it. And I'm looking back and I'm still amazed that people actually grasp what I'm trying to share, because what we now have, PowerPoint presentation, the content of that PowerPoint presentation only came 3 years into the project. And it was enough to give people a glimpse to say, all right, we can believe that this can be a bank. So we started the bank by faith with 12 people, and collectively we had 40,000 amongst us. And by faith, we call it a bank. And we started to take in money from open up a bank account, a central bank account, and did it on a spreadsheet. But it was enough of a concept that later that year, the guy who's currently my CEO, Jason Riley, found us and he said, I want to be part of this. Now, he came out of banking. He studied alternative banking systems. He prepared his whole life to be this guy. He just never could do it on his own. And here he found a dinky little thing. And today we are, a month ago, we got the prize for the best performing CFI in South Africa. So it's and I had nothing to do with it. I was just the guy who was, stupid enough to say, let's just do what we can with what we have. So yeah, I'm a firm believer of this minimum viable product. What can you do with what's in your hand, and move it forward? And I think yes, wisdom. This kind of wisdom chat didn't even existed a year ago. Oh, well, it did. It started a year ago, now look at it, and then Wisdoms is now being part of a international network of things. So no, I'm a firm believer. You just need to use what you have and move forward. And thank you for inspiring us to be so.
Oh, thanks, Jasper. And I think you do yourself a disservice by not taking any credit for what's happened with GIG. I think it's been all you. Yes, you pulled the right people around you, and they've bought into the vision that you've created. But I certainly believe you remain the driving force behind all of that, and the time and the effort that you put into to get it to where it is just a testimony of the process that you've described. So yeah, well done. Right, so Trevor is taking over the scene here with his minimum viable product.
Well, seeing as Jasper brought it up, the discussion of minimum viable product, this was dated. I was just looking at some of our articles on this, December the 9th, 2019. And the idea behind this is, and you can see there at Jasper's venue, we were hosting all of our members, and we were taking them through the concepts of minimum viable product for all business entrepreneurs, because I was listening to Ed there, and the thought struck me, and I don't want you to take this the wrong way, Ed, but somewhere along the line, can we not get an offspring of Ed and Thabiso? Because then we'll have the perfect entrepreneur, I think. I was just amazed with both of them and the angles from which they came on. But look, this discussion of minimum viable product, for me, it came out of tech firms growing in Silicon Valley who realized that you had no time to actually develop and market research and test products. If you didn't have a product out in the marketplace in the next 3 weeks or next 3 months, you were actually gone as a tech operation. So the concept of minimum viable product was, well, how do we quickly get some sort of response? And this is where they use the net, and they use
Is that Trevor that's gone off, or is it me? Is everyone else still there?
No, I think it's Trevor's gone. I think he's got too many tabs open at the same time.
That's Trevor for you, yeah. And then he's probably cut it down, especially for this morning. Yeah. You back, Trevor? No? Looks like he's been bounced off. Yeah, so I think we'll have to pick it up from there. So yeah, as you were saying, we were running these sessions at the chamber, and that was at Jasper. There he comes back, and that was at Jasper's conference facility. There, you back with us, Trev? You muted? Yeah. Yeah. Are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
Oh, we're back.
You back? You're the one who disappeared. We were always waiting for
you.
you.
Guys disappeared, man. It's got something to do with the technology. Anyway, I think I was saying that the concept of perfection might have been taught by MBA classes and all that sort of things prior to the 2000s and 2010s. Right now, you actually can't afford try and focus on perfection, because by the time you get your idea to the marketplace, there are 10,000 other people have already got their idea out into the marketplace. And that's why I came up in Confessions of a Serial Entrepreneur. Well, I came up with this in 1996, but my view was, with the internet around, if you think it, it's already been thunked, which is to turn around and say, you know what, don't try and be the smartest blooming Joe in town. Recognize that we're all flawed. All ideas are flawed. Take Bill Gates. I mean, the biggest criticism of Bill Gates is that Microsoft was the biggest scam product ever. But do you think he was concerned about it? And do you think all the consumers that used Microsoft to get him into his billions were actually concerned about the flaws? The critics were, but the users were actually paying him a ton of money, and look where he is today. So the concept that we actually came up is never be afraid to be perfectly flawed. And this is what I like about where Thabiso is coming from, and somewhere in between where Ed comes from, because Ed, bringing up this blooming concept of MVP from the perspective that you do, is generally brought up by arch capitalists. So I've now put you down under the file of arch capitalist Ed Chapman, discussed MVP, because it is about retaining the money in your organization and trying to get the biggest return on your ideas as quickly as possible without throwing a fortune away, which is what most people do in business. So it's a very sharp, profit-oriented concept in my mind, MVP. And I'm so pleased that that arch capitalist Ed brought it up. And then I'm interested in that Thabiso comes out of Alex Township. And I heard on Freedom Day that there was a significant difference between the folks in Alex and the folk in Sandton, which is a divide of 3 to 4 kilometers. And Thabiso brought up the story. And you know, anyone looking at Thabiso's stories would say, gee, the flaws in that story, trying to actually create an album in a mobile toilet. Gee, I think that is the most fantastic concept ever. Now, can we use MVP to take that story out to the world? There are 4.5 billion people that are connected to us like this. If only 1 million think that it is a phenomenal concept, and all they do is contribute $1 into that particular project. This is where crowdfunding comes in. This is where youthful minds like Thabiso, who understand what the technology is about, then start taking the technology. And there's a combination between what Ed was talking about: test, market research. Don't throw all your eggs into one basket. Go out there and don't keep your idea in your head. Get your idea out to the marketplace, and don't worry if it doesn't succeed. Then maybe you tweak it again into another minimum viable product and test that. Find out what it is that the market really wants by getting them to pay for it. So MVP is getting the market not to say, I like this. It's to turn around and say, here's my $1, here's my $100, here's my $1,000, and to prove that they like it by paying for it. That's what arch capitalism is all about, and that's what Ed Chapman is all about. I now know what hides in his soul.
Okay, there we go. Trevor Nell Renton, he's frozen on us again by the looks of things.
Frozen on my soul, yeah.
Yeah, he touched your soul and that froze him out. All right, so he's clearly got some issues with his connection this morning. Yeah. Are you back with us, Trevor? No, he's not. Okay, so I'm going to bounce his hearing off here just if I can. It's not letting me even do that. There we go. All right. Okay, he might pop back in, but we're basically almost at the bottom of the hour, well, past the bottom of the hour. No, we're at the bottom of the hour, ready to wrap up. But I think, yeah, it's been a fascinating period for us in this last year since lockdown started, because we've done quite a lot of MVP work, and you know, I've been mostly the one that the MVP stuff has been pushed onto, because we've developed the virtual trade fair.africa. We developed the virtual trade fair.global. We did wisdom summits. We've done wisdom chats. All of these things done on a shoestring budget, and yeah, just really leveraging the I suppose the mental capacity, the IP, the people around us, and there's spare time to put these things together and start to roll them out into the market. You know, today I think we're on our 277th Wisdom's Chat episode. We've done our first virtual trade fair.africa. We had 8 speakers slots over 4 days, so 32 speaking slots over 4 days of different businesses, different ideas, different concepts, you know, plus the 114 odd exhibitors that came onto that event. And we put that whole thing together literally with, from a technical point of view, myself and Gavin Julian, and from a connecting point of view, Trevor and a couple of other people to pull in all the speakers and make the connections around the globe. And I mean, we had speakers from all over the globe. Our second event was the Wisdom's Global Summit. That was on the 24th of July. There we had 8 speakers, again, from around the globe. And again, you know, put together with very basic technology. Well, I say basic technology, almost free technology, you know, Zoom, LinkedIn, and the willingness of people to participate. So, you know, that again, some amazing content came out of that day. We then did the virtual trade fair.global, which was a one-day event on the 24th of September. Again, we had speakers from around the globe, some really you know, stunning content and input, and we had exhibitors on that day as well. Yeah, and so on and on it goes, you know, right up to the most recent one, which was Tales from Trails just over a week ago, where again, you know, with Ed's help, and we had a stunning, you know, 5 hours, was it Ed? 5 hours, I think it was, of some really inspiring, really amazing stories. And that's yeah, that's the way it's been going. So, you know, we're building on that. We're rolling it forward, and looks like it's developing to something really interesting. So, yeah, MVP is what we're all about. Do it. Try and do it cash flow positive. You know, don't throw lots of money at it. You know, and I think that's where, you know, people like Steve Jobs, yes, they had the money to throw at it, but you know, for ordinary people like us, you print it on your HP printer at home, and you record it in the loo, and then you do it with as minimum capital outlay as possible, and just look to generate positive cash flow going forward out of it. So you leverage what you have and the spare capacity, and you roll out these concepts. So I think for me, that's what it's all about. So Trevor, you came back again. You disappeared for a moment, but I think we pretty much ready to wrap it up here. Yeah, maybe some thoughts around a topic for tomorrow.
You know what? There are, Ed, you wanted to have a thought, but I've got 2 thoughts. Yeah. So Ed, go for it.
Not 3.
Well, I was just thinking it'd be great to hear what Dabiso's working on now or wants to work on, and then how we can perhaps chip in and give him some encouragement, some advice, some thoughts. Is that something you'd be interested in, Dabiso?
Oh, yes, of course. Of course.
And if I can fine tune that a bit, that was one of my 2 ideas here. I wrote down here, I'd love to hear a day in the life of Dabiso. Because we've just come out of our Freedom Day, and I don't know if you heard me, I was talking about Alex and Sandton and the divide between there. I'd love to actually hear what happens when Dabiso wakes up. What does he see? What does he experience? And then you know, how does his typical day unfold? I'd love to know where he is right now and how he's connecting to us on a global technology, where he is right now, so that we can understand what this guy has to go through to become a global entrepreneur. Man, I'd love that story. So Ed, it's just a sort of fine tuning on what you were talking about. Then he can go into his ideas on what he wants to do. But we need to understand the limitations that actual people have to be able to become global entrepreneurs. And if we can then find a way to put some IP into that. Ed, does that work for you?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But then it's got to work for Thabiso.
Does that work for you to be?
It works. It works. It works.
I want to look through your eyes and how you got to be way more intelligent than everyone else on this blooming panel here when we've spent 250 collective years of getting experience. Where did you get all this intelligence from, given your typical day?
Excellent. All right, good. So day in the life of Thabiso. And yeah, hopefully we'll do it outside of the porta potty, but you know, we'll just. But looking forward to that, Thabiso. So great stuff. Have an excellent day further, and we will see you in the morning for the day in the life of Thabiso. Great stuff. Have a good one, guys. Cheers now.